So I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's 5:02. Hopefully Arthur can make it. So first on the agenda is to approve our minutes from the December meeting. I looked them over. I didn't have any adjustments. I thought, Louise, for a reluctant minutes taker, I think you do an excellent job.
Agreed. Thank you.
Does anybody have any changes or adjustments to them? Okay, then I move that we approve the minutes from 12/19 as emailed by Louise.
Second. Third.
Okay. All in favor? all four of us.
Aye.
Okay, cool. Great. So that's done. All right. Next to our ongoing topic, status of outreach and records collection. Some of these you guys can let me know when you want me to take them off, but I think a lot of them are just sort of ongoing. So first was the Conservation Commission documents. Lisa, I think you're wading through.
I'm still going through them.
Okay.
We had talked about pulling out what I thought might be important. And I made copies, but you guys are over there and we're over here. At the very end of the resource management plan, which I think we all got a while ago.
We did.
It breaks down the organizational commitments I think really beautifully for all the different agencies involved, what their commitment is. So I brought a version of this to the Conservation Commission last meeting and asked people who had been on the commission for a while, to look it over, and at the next meeting, which is tomorrow, hopefully I'll get a sense of what they have actually kept up with. But this includes Stockbridge and Lee Land Trust, Stockbridge and Lee Concom, Tennessee Gas, Mass Turnpike, Mass Highway, all at Marion's. It's a really nice summary of what every group committed to doing.
In 1999.
In 1999.
Yeah.
So I think, we don't have to rewrite the book. I think this would be a good place to just touch base with these organizations and see who has kept up with what.
So what page of the resource management plan is that? Just so I can.
Starts on 45.
Okay. I'll take a look at that.
It's at the very end.
Okay. So I had that as our 7th agenda item, commitments from the 1999 resource management plan. So you are on Concom. That's why you spoke to Concom about that, correct?
Correct.
And then we have the list of everybody else. So I guess I know that I think you had reached out to the Lee Land Trust and you weren't hearing anything back. So I took them off the agenda.
Yeah, I didn't hear back. And I didn't hear back from Lee Concom either.
Right.
I reached out to both.
Okay. Rich, do you work with them, with Lee at all in your other role?
Yeah, actually, I might talk to Marie Raftery because she has worked with the Lee at least with the Lee Land Trust. So we might be able to connect that way, and I'll follow up with her to see, or anybody else on the Land Trust who might have some connections with either of those two groups.
And you can look over this, because it's Lee and Stockbridge Land Trust commitments. You can look it over and see if there's any follow-up that's happened there.
All right, I'm just making some notes. Hold on. So maybe I have that for 0.7, but why don't we circle back? I'll look at that page 45 and maybe, or actually, Lisa, if you have it in front of you, maybe you could email all of us. I don't know. I'm just trying to think.
You have the document, right?
We all have the document, yeah.
So it starts on 45 and goes to 49.
I think I want some time to look at that before our next meeting, and then maybe we can talk about, I think in the next meeting, like who to approach, what's our priority. Sure. Because we haven't heard from those two groups in Lee, but maybe they're not as high a priority as some of the other people who've made commitments or organizations who've made commitments on there, Yeah, we're only 5 people.
Yeah, so. And I would say that BNRC and Mass Wildlife are both eager to enter.
Yeah,
the
yeah, exactly.
mode of
Yeah.
everything that was going on. So
Yeah.
So, you know, Nature Conservancy is on here, but BNRC is not, which surprises me. Mass Wildlife is. I don't know if they were not part of the original.
I think they were, because just when I report on the BNRC stuff, they got a lot of information about the bog and all the
Right.
whole area.
A lot of documents for some reason. So it seems like they would have been involved.
You see that?
No,
I don't see them on here, but I mean, maybe they got involved later, which is great.
Considering I'm only a third of the way through half the stuff they gave me. Yeah, they definitely involved somehow.
Okay. All right. So Lisa, anything else for the Conservation Commission documents other than?
Just a comment. And maybe I'll wait till we get to the landscape presentation.
Okay, cool. Museum and archives news clippings, Louise?
I do not have an update, but I do promise to have an update next time.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so I'll keep both of those on here. All right, NHESP. So last week, just as a reminder, Arthur talked about, he shared with us the bullet point list from Alex, whose name escapes me for a second. Oh, Alex Entrup. Just talking about Alex in particular for NHESP is in charge of controlled burns. So he was the one who met with Father Drabick and the fire chief and talked through some stuff that's happening. So I connected with Alex. We talked on the phone for quite a bit. And he is sort of newer to NHESP. He hasn't been around since the original Kampoosa Bog Committee was in existence. So he said for this particular prescribed fire in Kampoosa, it's not just Kampoosa that they're going to be looking at. They're also looking at Agawam, and I don't know. He said there's 3 or 4 out here in Western Mass that are critical and unique and have all been. He didn't use the word neglected. I think that's probably too strong of a word, but the pandemic definitely set back some of these planned projects, and now there is funding as a result of I think it's the Rest of the River project. So there is funding to start looking at how to control invasives in all of these, I think there's 4 bogs and fens, or maybe they're all fens, I don't know. So he said that they are definitely a few years away from doing any sort of actual burn. And it takes a while for them to put the groundwork in place. So he said they are getting pretty close to a final plan, but that's their internal plan. And then they've got to go through, all the necessary steps of figuring out, what and when and where. And then, of course, there's an intersection with the Conservation Commission and the, individual towns where these critical resources exist. He also said that while he's excited to hear what we're doing, he's really more of an accessory to this as opposed to somebody who would be personally involved in this committee. And he said the correct person is Chris Bulow. That's the guy that sent us the exuberant email a few months back saying, I'm so excited and thrilled that you're doing this. And I haven't really heard back from him. So last month, Rennie, am I saying his name right?
I think it's Rennie.
Rennie, thank you. Yeah. I have a mental block. Okay, Rennie said he would put in a good word for us. Likewise, Alex is as well. So he said Chris is really the person who is going to, because of his particular role in an NHESP, he's over a lot of different areas, whereas Alex is really the prescribed burn guy, which is just, one small part. He's not hydrology, he's not fish, he's not native, endangered plants, etc. So I'm just gonna try to go back at Chris. I contacted him at the beginning of the year, like, early January. I'm gonna try to go back at him maybe in a week because Alex said that he would talk to him this week.
So question for whoever you talk to. I mentioned this to a couple of people that do invasive management, and they questioned how effective it is. So when you talk to them, you can just ask for some, reference material on the effectiveness. I mean, we're not regulatory, so we can't say yes or no. I'm just curious
Right.
about how effective it is.
Yeah, he said that, yeah, he talked a little bit about the effectiveness, but he talked about it as one thing that needs to be done in with a whole bunch of other things as well.
Okay,
But again, he's focused on prescribed burns. That's what his job is. So he's not aware of what's happening with hydrology, who's checking the water levels. He talked about some of the unique archaeological stuff that's been found, but then also talked about the effect of salt use on Mass DOT. So he does know bits and pieces about that stuff.
yeah,
I asked particularly, when it comes to the town of Stockbridge, who is it within the town that they would, I guess, sort of make aware that they were about to do this. And he said, well, now that you guys are in existence, we would let you know, but because it's, waterways, et cetera, we would alert the Conservation Commission. And then of course, because it's burning, we would discuss it, the fire chief would be involved. So he said sometimes it's just an NOI, but sometimes it's an RDA. It depends a little bit on the scope of the work and what the individual town wants.
Yep.
So I actually, to be honest, I don't know if I'm going to be talking to him again in particular, because he was kind of like, it's great to hear from you. We'll loop you. He said he'll make sure he loops us in going forward. He has our email address and all that stuff, but he's not really the right person to speak to, was basically the high level message. So.
okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So that's NHESP, local Mass Wildlife Office. Oh, one thing, when I spoke to Alex, he was like, your local Andrew. And I was like, yes, we've been talking to him and engaging him. So.
Yeah, I was going to say that, I mean, I haven't made any progress since our last meeting on this particular subject, but I have actually been working with Andrew and another gentleman by the name of Pete Milanese on work around Agawam Lake because of a potential land property thing that we're working on over there. And Pete seemed to be very knowledgeable of what was going on. He's been very involved with Agawam Lake, so he may actually know this person, Chris. And so and Pete seems to be very responsive, so I could actually reach out to him just to indicate that, we're interested in speaking to Chris about Kampoosa Bog and go from there. But otherwise, I haven't made any major strides to anything with them yet.
Yeah.
I think they're just really eager to, when we're ready to invite them back into the fold, they'd be happy to participate.
Okay.
And they have a lot of material on Kampoosa Bog, not only in terms of in the time leading up to the formation of the ACEC, but also just monitoring things as well since then. So,
okay. So should I keep them on the agenda?
I mean, I might as well for now, just until.
Okay, so we don't forget about them.
Yeah, and I'll just keep pushing to see what they can, give us in terms of it.
Tennessee Gas, I left a message for my contact there. I haven't heard back. It's only been a week, maybe. I also have his email address, so maybe I'll just email him, but I had left him a voicemail. And again, I don't even know if he's the right person. He's just, since I'm the president of a homeowners association that has a big section of the pipeline, at least it feels big to me, that goes through our private roads, I just reached out to that guy because I didn't know who else to talk to, hoping that he could point me in the right direction. So in that resource management plan, Lisa, I'm assuming that Tennessee Gas has some to-dos in there?
They do. Yes, they do.
So there is, I think I mentioned this last month. If you go to the NHESP website and you just search the word Kampoosa, all sorts of things come up. And one thing that has come up is a 5-year plan from the Tennessee Gas Company. It's like a 2002 to 2007, I think, plan for controlling, I don't want to say controlling invasive, some of it's controlling invasives, but it's really more about just keeping the pipeline clear of plants and shrubs and certain trees and how they would go about doing that, et cetera. It doesn't say we're going to do it by this date or anything like that. It's sort of a very general plan, but it's future. So they're obviously active in Kampoosa somehow. Okay. Nature Conservancy. I didn't even know if I should still keep this on here.
So can I just ask one question about
Yeah.
what you just said? I mean,
Yeah.
I always just wonder about herbicides, you know, if it's general,
They are mentioned there.
they are mentioned, okay.
Yeah.
It's always concerning.
I tried to download the document to see if I could send it to all of you guys. I wasn't able to figure it out. But my husband's good at those things, so maybe I'll have him do it. Because there's a lot of stuff in there also about, you know, if somebody sprays something and it gets on their skin, how they wash it, and, you know, all of that stuff. They list out the chemicals. They list out a lot of invasives as well, because they're interested in removing those things as well.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Louise, I left Nature Conservancy on here. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard anything since our last meeting. I've had no communication, so I have no updates.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it on here because, you know, Rennie said, I mean, I know that there are only 2 people. But we know that they have stuff we might be interested in seeing. Oh, I should mention about NHESP also. I mentioned to Alex that we have drone footage of the area, and he was very excited to hear that and said, you know, is this something that I said, I believe we'd like to try to do it quarterly. We just sort of generally talked about that. But I think we all agreed a couple of meetings ago that we would need a Jess Toro or somebody like that to say, I think, you know, this is the right time to do it. You know, the beginning of April versus the end of April might make a big difference, and we don't know that. But he was quite excited to hear that and said that that's something that they might want to see. So I don't know how one would go about that or whatever, but, you know, he said, because I had mentioned to him, you know, we want to, if there's, I'm going to make this up, 4 different organizations who want to do a prescribed burn in Kampoosa Bog, like, I think we need to have some coordination and around some of that, or at least make other parties aware, et cetera. And I think when it comes to drone footage, it's sort of a similar thing. I don't know.
So with respect to the drone footage, right now I have it all up on a Google Drive.
Yeah.
So it's something we can easily share. And it's a combination of footage and photographs. And I haven't actually gone in and done any of the work of taking all the different images and kind of mapping it out into this one big, but because they're quite large, you know, so, I mean, when everything's said and done, this could be a few hundred gigabytes of content, pretty high resolution. So something that's, and I'm actually been working with BNRC in terms of ideas of how we could actually take that and kind of map that better. So not only, because the thing is, there's also embedded data in there about where everything's geotagged, and so I need to, what I haven't figured out is how to get to that. So but it's all in there. So
interesting.
I'll work with Nick too, who did the footage, to help decipher that too.
Okay, cool. BNRC.
So with respect to BNRC, I started going through that file box in lieu of actually scanning everything after listening to, I believe it was Lisa, who was on the Concom, right? Who was saying maybe instead of scanning everything and then having all these duplicates, I decided to start doing an inventory of what's in there. And a couple weeks ago, I shared with everyone a Google spreadsheet that shows what I'm finding. And by and large, right now, I've gone through about 3 or 4 folders of information that's basically telling the history of how land has been either acquired or deeded to either the Marians or other groups like the Berkshire Natural Resources Council that effectively make up this whole area. So
Right.
it's the whole history of how it all kind of came together, and how it's been like who owns what and what have you, and who's monitoring what and those things. So I've basically gone through 3 folders, and it's all the back and forth between BNRC and the state, and then the lawyers, and then the landowners and stuff like that. So that's what I've gotten so far. It's all detailed there. If anyone needs help deciphering what I did in this spreadsheet, let me know. But it seems like this is not going to be overly redundant information with what maybe it's certainly not something that I'm finding in the land trust files. It seems pretty specific. So I can keep going with it if you want. And then obviously I can scan them and tie the inventory to the scans.
So I looked at it quickly, and it seemed like most of it was different from what I found in the Concom.
That's
And
good.
my thought on it, and I don't know who would do this, but once we have it all, it'd be great if it could go in categories. A lot of the Concom stuff was minutes from all the meetings and CRs and deeds. So once we have it all, if it could be categorized so that, if you're interested in the deeds, you could look here and, whatever, but instead of looking at the whole list.
Right.
Well, I think this can be so there's a file type by which the data can be sorted so that you can pull out deeds, for example, in the 2 pages that Rich provided. Because that's how we get value out of all of this, because it's so detailed. And also I was thinking about labels, like I think Rich, you just mentioned monitoring, like that's a key word, monitoring. Like if somebody is monitoring something, that's information that we would like to extract from, this document. So I don't know if there's a set of labels or something that, we need to agree on or develop so that we can tag stuff, because, an item about meeting at, Fred Rutberg's house to discuss something. I mean, that's probably not something we're ever going to need to look at, but there might be other things that are of high value.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, like all the deeds and the conservation restrictions, the maps, all of those things seem like they could be useful. On occasion, there are some letters that are interesting, but like you said, there's some of it's a little bit TMI, and we don't need to know that stuff, I guess, but so yeah, I mean, I've been trying to kind of keep the file type kind of clear so we know that one's a letter, and then some of it's just like this abstract piece of paper that's got stuff on it, and it seems like they were probably worksheets that were used to go towards like the construction of the conservation restriction and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
in the conservation restriction, so having 3 different versions of it may not necessarily be helpful other than that was actually filed.
Just need the final one, the official one. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Right.
I can keep going with it, and then if there's like you said, Louise, if there's anything that you see in what I'm doing, if you need me to call it out better, I can go back and do that, and then that way, other than like the file type and stuff like that, I can do that.
Yeah, I was wondering, even if just a triage, so that we have a 1, 2, 3, if something is a 1, it's, it's a document of high interest.
Oh, okay.
Something like that. And if it's just, and maybe we don't even, if we have a triage system, maybe we don't even document the 3s, it's just like, this isn't even worth my entering into the database,
Yeah.
I don't know, something, because I feel like, we all can kind of get wrapped around the axle. Kind of
Oh,
capturing.
totally. I mean, Rich, when you sent this out, I thought it looked terrific. I responded to your email just to say, I think it looks terrific, but I don't know if everybody can commit to this level of detail. And, you know, to your point, Louise, we could just do this for a long time,
Yeah,
you know,
I
and
mean,
not
it's
get
like-
any place else.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was
Sucked
trying
in.
not to read every single one as deep, you know,
Right.
most of it was just sort of like, just correspondence to say, I've done this, I've done that. And it seemed like, who cares? Let's just get to the point where they have something that is a product of what
Yeah.
they've done and use that. So,
Well, no, I mean, I think as a trial balloon, this spreadsheet is enormously helpful because I think it is highlighting exactly these issues. So I think that's terrific. And I guess I would just offer, I mean, I would be happy to take a file to contribute to this effort and, you know, and try to imitate what you've done here, capture the same, you know, column names and so on, to sort of see, help kind of dig in and see what's there, what's of merit, you know?
well, the one I haven't done yet is the one that's on the Marian Fathers, which is probably like an inch and a half thick. And it's all double page, like they were really frugal Yankees. So everything's like on every single page. So you're just trying to read through it all. So I've been avoiding that one like the plague, but there are some smaller ones that we could, I could hand out to you if you like.
Okay, all right, great.
Nice. Okay. So digital file storage of all records, I haven't gotten anywhere on this, partially because I wanted to know, Rich, what came out of your discussions around some of this.
So did I believe I shared the video of the demo
Yeah,
that I got,
You
right?
did. And
So-
I tried to,
Okay,
I started to watch it, then I was like, woo, I don't think I could.
It's not Emmy award-winning content, so it's, what I can tell you is that I believe the Land Trust is leaning towards utilizing this software
Okay.
for our needs.
Yeah,
In terms of licensing, it's pretty straightforward for nonprofit organizations, but it gets a little bit more complicated when municipalities jump in.
of course.
And I know that you asked about, did anyone speak to the Concom?
Yeah,
I-
just because
I
that
reached-
came up last time
I
as,
reached out to, I believe it was Lisa who told me to reach out to Ron.
Yeah, I brought it up at the last meeting and
Yeah.
people were interested. And Ron said to contact him.
Yeah,
So,
no, I did, but he hasn't gotten back to me. So I was gonna follow up with him because usually I'll find him on Elm Street in the morning and I'll
all right,
just
or I'll see him tomorrow night too.
I'll grab a cup of coffee and I'll talk to him.
My question, and I'm thinking in terms of the Concom, is, you know, how much software you need to actually do it and how labor intensive it would be. I
Right,
think
the
the
learning
final
curve.
product, the learning curve, and I think the final product would be great. It's very different from what we do now, which, you know, isn't to say we can't do it, but it raised those questions for me. I was impressed with it. I thought, especially for site visits,
really,
the pictures and the notes and having everything in one place so you could go back and see the history, I really liked it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that's what got me excited because I had to do 3 conservation restriction monitoring this year. And
Yeah.
it took me more time to actually fill out everything and do the
Ooh.
paperwork than it did for me to actually go and do the actual monitoring.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a great tool in that regard. It does also provide a good historical record of things.
that's what I think is important.
Yeah.
I mean, look at us right now. We're scrambling, you know, looking like under the couch and, you know,
Right.
between the cushions to try to find what transpired over the last 20 years or so.
And you
Louis-
can group them by the different types. So, you know, like if you're looking for, you know, like all the various deeds or the conservation restrictions or surveys that are all associated with like the stuff that I'm looking at BNRC, you should be, you know, this software should allow us to kind of pull that up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And it's all cloud-based, so there's no software to install on any computers. It's basically just a website you go to and you start working, and it's, you know, it seemed pretty straightforward, but it's probably going to take a bit of an effort initially to just sort of get everything in there.
Of
But then
course.
for like an ongoing sort of maintenance kind of thing, it seemed like it would be relatively easy to maintain. You know, it's gonna be, what I will say is that, for the land trust, it's gonna probably cost us about $700 a year to have the licensing to do this, but it covers, all of our properties and unlimited users. For a municipality to take it on, I don't know, understand their licensing, but it's like $2,500 for the municipality, but it can cover any group or committee that's within that municipality. So it can
Oh.
cover what we're doing,
Okay.
use for it could
Okay.
use for Concom, it could use for Stockbridge Bowl, what have you.
So
So,
that's different. That's different than what I thought. I thought if the Concom got it, it was just about $700, but you're saying. that
no,
they-
that's just for the nonprofit rate.
Okay.
For the
So they-
municipality rate, it goes up because.
Which is probably security based, I would assume.
Yeah, so let Ron know that, because that's different.
will.
From what I
Yeah, and I
thought.
thought maybe I would talk to Ron and talk to Patrick about how, the benefit could be reaped across a number of committees.
Yep.
So, maybe that, and maybe, like Gold Meadows and the Stockbridge Bowl and us and Concom, could all sort of put all of our data into that, and then we have a bigger picture about Stockbridge.
Yep.
So the per user cost kind of concerned me. That seemed like a lot, and considering how many people might be contributing data. And also, I did not watch till the end, but I know that the guy you were talking to who's doing the demo spoke specifically about not being able to take the drone footage and overlay the map. So to sort of put together the kind of map that you're talking about, Rich, that software is not in a position to do at this point. Is that something they're planning to develop or not?
So we can bring in drone footage and just have it there as a file, a media file that you can reference.
Right.
But in terms of what I'm trying to do in terms of creating an overlay map, I think that would have to be something that needs to be created outside of the software. And then once you produce the map, you can bring that into
Create a record, basically,
record
within it.
So that's the thing I'm still working on to sort of figure out what's the best way to handle that.
Okay.
But I do agree, and I did convey to him that I was a little concerned that the way that their licensing works at the municipality level is not much different than what we're already wrestling with, where there's only like one or two people keepers
Right.
of the system and the information, and it just doesn't make sense. So whereas if you're a nonprofit and you buy it annually, we can have up to 50 properties that we manage, and we can have unlimited users. So I don't quite understand the switch there, which is something I need to talk to them. It could be a security thing, but one other option, which I'd have to talk to my fellow trustees at the land trust, is that we could theoretically get it at the land trust level and then share the software that we have with these other committees. And that way we have more control over access and stuff like that. It's just whether or not the town wants to do that. So
I think that gets dicey.
yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. I was
Then
just-
you'd have for the Concom, you'd have Concom information in the land trust. I don't know.
Right.
That doesn't seem.
I think that if we could get each of the different groups to buy into it, so Concom and us and the Bowl and Gold Meadow to buy into it, and not necessarily financially buy into it, but buy into the notion of getting the content into one place.
Yeah, commit to doing the work.
And
So
we
Gold-
get the vendor to open up some licenses so we can have multiple users.
Yep.
For each of these different groups to be able to put content in and access it. Then we might have something we can work with.
So maybe the Forestry Commission also,
Oh, sure.
you can mention it there. And Gould Meadow is managed by the Concom. It's not separate. So,
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
So-
they're not a separate entity.
Right.
Lisa, when you said this is very different than how conservation is working now. What is the system
Paper and pencil,
Okay, got it.
and files and, documents.
Yeah,
hard
ye
copy.
old paper and pencil. Okay.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's what we're doing too.
Some of the documents are electronic, but the files are all, paper.
Paper. Okay. Yeah.
So it's something that eventually does need to happen.
Yeah.
Whether it's this one or something down the line.
Right. It's actually too
that's where
bad
we're
that the
headed.
state of Massachusetts, the Commonwealth wouldn't say, we should have this for all of our conservation
Right.
commissions because they all have to, be doing this work. So.
Right.
The funny thing is they have to be doing something. I would be really surprised if the state's not already doing some sort of.
Right. Yeah.
I can ask, if there's any bigger picture going on.
All right. So more to come on that. I just know that we're not going to be able, our little Kampoosa committee, we're not going to be able to be the ones that drive this and get this. It obviously has to be conservation or, somebody
The
bigger.
select board probably has to buy into it too.
I'm
so.
sorry.
The select board probably.
Oh yeah, select board, of course.
Town
Yeah.
Administrator, so.
Yeah.
So I will follow, we will probably vote in a couple weeks to get it at the land trust. And I can at least offer up what our experience is in terms of onboarding all the material. And then if need be, I can even demo how we're using it to all the different groups within town.
Who was at that demo that you sent us?
It was just me.
It was just you. Oh, it was just the two of you. Oh gosh.
Yeah, I mean, I
didn't
just
realize
did it and
that.
recorded it so that I could have
Yep.
it and share it with others. So that's all I did.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Okay. So mission and vision statement. Until I read Louisa's minutes, I had forgotten that I said that I would send out some examples and things like that before the meeting so that we could look them over and then have an informed discussion. So that's on me. So I will commit to doing that before the next meeting. I will send you what was landed on by the previous committee, and then I think there's also some iterations in there, and then I might just sort of brainstorm a little bit with some other things based on some things that we've talked about in our meetings, being a clearinghouse and like things like that, helping connect the dots for people, et cetera. So I'll do that next time. Then I also, I brought this up last time as well about guidelines for residents who live in the ACEC. I do think this is something that we should have on our to-do list in the future at some point. We had a question from one of the people that attended the last meeting about what can they do, what can't they do, and and things like that. And obviously there are laws that govern what you can do on any body of water, or whether it's a river or a lake or a pond or whatever. But I feel like one of our roles could be to sort of heighten people's awareness of what you can do and can't do, and even maybe with an understanding of what some of the downstream effects, which are sometimes literally downstream from people. So I want to leave this on here, not that we're necessarily going to get to it right away, but I spent a lot of time on the ACEC website through the state, and there simply isn't anything that says what people can and can't do. And it's not totally surprising because each ACEC is unique, compared to another one. So I think maybe this needs to be something in conjunction with Conservation Commission, or I don't know. I was talking to Patrick on the select board about this as well, and he thought it made a lot of sense as well.
Which part?
Coming up with some guidelines
Okay.
that are unique to this ACEC for people who live in it, for people who live near it. I don't, since I'm president of a homeowners association, most of whom are lake people who are on lakefront property on Stockbridge Bowl, I've been sort of banging the drum since I've been on the board about, pesticides and, composting and all sorts of things like that. Knowing that there are just certain things where it's actually, I believe, illegal to, do certain things on waterfront property. And I don't think a lot of people know about these things. So it might make sense, especially because now we've introduced ourselves to that, however many letters we sent out, 300 letters or so, just to come from a place of, I guess, some authority. I don't know. Okay.
Rich,
So,
I think, Rich, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Sorry, yeah. I had a guest in here. I think one of the things that I was thinking about from one of the participants in the last meeting was how they said that they live downstream of the bog. They have an approved bond that was agreed to by the select board and stuff like that. I'm not discrediting that information, but that's kind of information that we should probably be aware of to know what kind of deals other groups have made with respect to being a resident either in or near or downstream of the bog. And so just having good understanding of what people's expectations are, or what, with respect to the town or what have you, would also be useful. So.
yeah. Okay.
I would venture to guess that there's no person on our select board that is aware of this agreement that exists with respect to this pond. So it's probably a long-standing handshake somewhere.
Actually, my memory of it was that he said it was the Concom that gave them approval in 1997. And so in fact, there very much should be a record of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought
If there was a Concom, there would be.
Yeah.
So it's written down on a piece of paper from
Exactly.
Start going through those files. Okay. All right. So commitments from 1999 resource management plan. We already kind of talked about that. I'll leave it on for next week's, next month's meeting, and we will just read through them as a group. And then inventory of documents template. We already talked about that. And so next we have a special guest. Kay Siddiqui, is that how I pronounce your last name? Okay, you're muted. Kay had reached out to us. I think you probably all saw the email, just to say that she was formerly on the Nature Conservancy and happened to be in town now and was interested in what we were doing. So I just threw her on the agenda, not really knowing exactly what she was going to say to us, but it's just nice for you to be here.
I didn't know either, and I've just taken notes and highlighted some things that sent me right down memory lane.
Oh, nice.
The only reason I knew that you were having this meeting is that my friend Shirley Blanchard, who used to own either a bookstore in Pittsfield, still from the Cape, follows Stockbridge News, and she said, "Kay, you need to know their meeting about Kampoosa." So I got in touch with Tim Simmons, who was the I can't remember the exact total, but he was first with the Nature Conservancy. And then he moved over to Restoration for Natural Heritage. And he was he was the driver of the whole thing. And I think at this point, since I'm not working anymore, for this, I can say, I remember slogging out there the first day with Tim Simmons. It wasn't really water where you could swim. It wasn't really land where you could walk. And he showed us how we should clip Phragmites. You can't spray in Kampoosa Bog. You have to clip stem by stem. And I think he must have had a herbicide license and put, with a little squeeze bottle, drop by drop, some glyphosate, which is basically Roundup with no surfactant. And I spent an afternoon doing that and thought, thank God this is not my real job. Ooh. And then it ended up being my real job for years. So I was basically, for the Nature Conservancy, I did other things, but I did GPS in the very early days of GPS and GIS with ArcView, trying to map it
Oh,
again.
wow.
Yeah, trying to walk on water, literally. And I can still remember the feeling of walking on the floating sedge mat and how amazing it was, and have Tim say, "Oh, see this little sedge? This is one so rare." And the main species that we wanted to save from the Phragmites overwhelming it out on the floating sedge mat was Betula pumila, which is this globally rare little birch that is absolutely gorgeous. And so I'm very interested in the talk about controlled burn. Tim was very big about controlled burns for certain parts of our lands in South County, but it wasn't for controlling invasives. It was for promoting keeping open areas with grasses instead of becoming overwhelmed with shrubs and young trees, because we wanted some open grassy areas for certain species. Is this recorded in the public domain?
It is.
Yes.
Okay, so I won't talk about species. That's the only reason, is that we shouldn't record that. So anyway, we were doing burns in South County. I never heard of doing burns in Kampoosa, but I have to say, part of the regimen for flipping Phragmites and carrying out like meter-long tops of the stems, piling them on the shore, was to cart them away and have them burned, so that we were not distributing seeds of Phragmites all over the county. So I had to drive all those big contractor bags up to the cogeneration plant and burn them. And then, I don't know, there was one fall where we were working so hard and I had a bunch of them in my backyard. And I said to somebody casually, I said, "I'm just going to wait for the winter burn season. I'm going to burn them." And I can't remember if it was Tony Gola from Fish and Wildlife or who said, "Oh, you be careful because they're hugely flammable." And I thought, I only have 3 bags, and it was winter. Thank goodness. And thank goodness I turned on the water, because it is unbelievable how flammable Phragmites is. So I'm very interested in if there's ever going to be a plan for a burn in Kampoosa. The other thing about burning Phragmites is that I think, and that this is like a 20-year-old memory, I think that the reason we couldn't just cut it is that if you burn it, the real living stems, burn it or cut it, it stimulates the growth, because related reeds in England are endangered because people kept cutting them for thatched roofs. And but what they found was, until they stopped it, was that cutting and burning actually stimulated it. So that's what they did to stimulate it, because they wanted more thatch. But I know, but as I say, 20-year memory. I'm so happy Arthur Dutille is on this committee, because Arthur was my point person with the Marians, and he let us use his canoe to cross the pond. And I have to show you. This was what the whole Nature Conservancy gave me when I retired. Can you see it? It's an aerial view. They got this done.
Of Kampoosa?
Of Kampoosa.
Oh, that's
Nice.
sweet.
And I didn't come organized to do anything, but I've been taking notes. And I have to tell you, David Adler and Stephanie are old friends. He was a young pilot here at Pittsfield, and I took flying lessons from him years ago. I worked with Sally Underwood's mother at BCD when I taught science. So this really is memory lane. I knew when Amy Rhodes was doing her study, and I've seen her product on the web about salt intrusion.
Correct, yeah.
And last fall, just for fun, I took a ride down to the Marians and got permission to go walk around the edge of the bog as much as I could. And they said, sure. And I ended up way at the end of Route 7, and there were 2 women. And I said, "Oh, are you doing the saltwater testing with Amy Rhodes?" They said, "No, we're from DOT, and they are checking wells." And they sort of told me, but without a map, I can't tell you where. They had some elevated levels, some others not so much. So salt was a big thing that Nature Conservancy did. And I should go back. I started working for the Nature Conservancy in 1992, and I retired in 2004. So those were the years that I worked, not every year in Kampoosa, but a lot of it. And let's see what else. Yeah, about Phragmites and a burn. Oh, Rennie, is Rennie Wendell? Is that who you were mentioning? Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
He was our special guest our last meeting.
Yeah, okay. I've been out with him even last spring, yeah, in certain South County TNC areas. So TNC had its golden age when I was working with them. Frank Lowenstein was the head. We had an office with about 8 people. We were working in about at least 2 ACECs and a lot of other properties that were very important as being neighbors of those ACECs. And we had grants. We had, as I say, early GIS and GPS. That was pretty cutting edge stuff. And oh yes, the other thing that we did, Judy Spencer was head of the Stewardship Committee back then. She ran great meetings. And one of the things that we did, and I don't know if anybody's found this record, I don't know if anybody would really ever read it. We did a whole summer of maybe not weekly meetings, but we had a formula from the TNC national headquarters about how to evaluate important areas. So we went through this whole program with about 8 or 10 people at every meeting. I think we did this in town hall. And we formulated as much information as we knew from field work and different sources about Kampoosa. I do remember when we presented it, George Wislocki, God bless him, looked at it and said, nobody's ever going to read this. And it represented like a whole summer of work. But I hope it still exists because it had, I mean, it was very dry science.
Do you have that document or
no, it's somewhere in Stockbridge? We
somewhere
did
in
it
Stockbridge.
We did it.
And it was the Kampoosa Bog Committee that did it.
Yes.
That kind of spearheaded it.
Judy spearheaded it, and I know who I can ask. Shelley Green, who was at a pretty high level in TNC and now lives in Connecticut.
Do you know what year?
So
Pardon?
do you think it's their treatment plan?
Is it
No.
the resource plan?
Oh, I don't know what we called it. It's been a long time.
But it probably is the resource.
It's probably the resource management plan that we're
Yeah,
talking
I
about.
would,
It might
yeah,
be.
I would think so.
Was
yeah.
it 1999 K-ish?
That sounds right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we've read it.
Oh, good.
Here's your audience, apparently.
I will tell Shelley. Oh my God. That's great.
It's really well done.
It's really well done.
Yeah, it's a great document.
Yeah.
And that was, I mean, I remember some tangential work with the NRC. We always invited their comments. I don't think they were actually in the bog. The main thing TNC did was work with Tim to map it. And I had 10 transects that might still be marked on trees along the southern border of the bog, starting at Route 7 and going all the way to the end.
Okay.
And I did transects of all kinds of things, you know, just what I was seeing. We were only licensed to use herbicide on Phragmites, and I had the herbicide license for us. But we were also keeping track of loosestrife. We were not happy about the loosestrife. We were keeping track of, oh gosh.
Glossy buckthorn?
Yes, good for you. Yep. Anyway, 5 invasives. And so I did transects that showed how much of that there was along any given transect. I did find eventually that I could recognize some of those things in winter by their bark and went out with snowshoes. And that was much easier, you know, to collect data then than in the summer when it was neither land nor water.
Fewer ticks too.
Yes. Oh, but you know what? This was long enough ago that the ticks had not. I remember the first tick I ever got in Sheffield, and then it seemed like every summer after that, as I was working farther north anywhere, I would start finding them everywhere. But Kampoosa was not ticky 20 years ago. It really was not.
So
was.
Kay, I love your enthusiasm. It's contagious. I'm excited to hear from you. I guess, you know, I know you said you're around this winter. I don't know if anybody here has any ideas of what we might do with Kay or need from Kay or whatever, but I mean, I'd love for you to continue to show up if you feel like it. And I think that, you know, what we're really, the stage that we're at right now is we're just trying to gather information. We've only been around since September.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So the committee has been non-existent or defunct, whatever you want to call it, for, you know, a solid 10 years-ish. So we're the members, and then we also have Arthur, and so far that's it. As you heard us talk about at the beginning about maybe some additional people joining, which would be terrific. And we're just in the process of kind of outreach to the different organizations that were involved before.
Okay,
Most of them, I think, are not the same people that were involved before.
great.
And then we're just trying to gather records and read those records, and, you know, hopefully at some point we'll be able to digitize them in some way. And then I think eventually, you know, we'd like to have a mission statement, a vision statement, and start. And ideally, I mean, at least I personally think we need to expand the members of this committee. Previously, the committee was not a town committee, you know, it was really more from the Stockbridge Land Trust. So this is a little bit different. This is a town of Stockbridge committee. But, you know, I think we've just got to start getting everybody in a room so everybody knows who's doing what. And, you know, that resource management plan, I think, is kind of like the perfect foundation
Oh, good.
for
that's
how we want to go forward. So I guess from you, if there's anything you think we're missing, or I don't know if you personally have any documents or
Well,
whatever.
No, that's an interesting question, because we were not allowed, I was allowed to work from home 3 days a week because I live in Pittsfield and I was traveling to Sheffield. So I used to have data, but gosh, it must be on, it's probably, I hate to tell you this, it's probably on the old computer that was in Sanibel and Hurricane Ian trashed all my old, so just
Yeah.
like September. But it's very possible, because I wasn't the only keeper of the data. If I get in touch with the people in Boston, they may actually still have Kampoosa data, you know, from when Nature Conservancy was
I mean,
hugely.
if it's information that you think would be relevant and helpful, if it's just, you know, how many glossy buckthorns and olive plants are in this acre, I don't know that that will help us necessarily, but
That's
if
what I
there's-
did. Yeah.
okay, if there's something that you think would be additive to what it is we're trying to accomplish, I think, you know, would be all for it.
So what exactly are you trying to accomplish?
Well, nobody's been paying attention to what's been going on in Kampoosa. There's not one body that knows what's going on. Tennessee Gas is doing their thing. Mass DOT is doing their thing. We know that there's some people from UMass Amherst that are sometimes poking around in there. So the committee was really brought back. I mean, we're in charge, I think, to some extent, of figuring out what it is we want to do and who we want to be. But I mean, for me, it's sort of, just for me personally, it kind of starts with understanding where are we today. And, you know, we aren't a body with any sort of authority, oversight authority or anything like that. But I think we're hoping that we can be, you know, a clearinghouse for information to help, like, this group talk to that group, et cetera. That et cetera is it's very general, but
No, it is. Well, I asked Tim before, I told Tim that I was going to tune in on this meeting. And I said, do you have any recommendations? And he said, well, he is just really glad to hear that you're all meeting again. I
is
mean,
he still with it, or is he retired?
He's retired, but
Oh,
boy,
he's retired.
I mean,
Yeah.
Scotch tape memory. I mean, he could tell you how many glossy buckthorns in every acre. And seriously, and what butterflies, and whether there's grasshopper sparrows in that field next door, and
Oh, neat.
stuff like that. Yeah, he's really good. But I told him I'll let him know how this goes tonight. And I mean, the only thing I can think of is that I can find out what Boston has and I can look through it.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
I would also love to see what you have in Stockbridge. If there's a day that I could just see what you have for Kampoosa. Is it in one place in town hall?
Nope.
No?
There's some in the ComCom office. There's actually a very well organized file in the ComCom office, but that it's not, you know, there's things scattered in different places, and there's some in the library, and we're learning BNRC has some. So it's scattered about.
And, you know, and Rennie said he's sure that there's some, but isn't sure what's there or how we would be able to get at it. So we're sort of just asking anybody who has anything.
Okay. Well, I mean, I probably wouldn't have just given you numbers of how many glossy buckthorns or even phragmites, but I did make maps. If they still have the GIS data, I can still do our GIS online. That's what I do in Sanibel when I'm there in the winters
Oh, okay.
for their conservation people.
Oh,
So, yeah. But I'm not working. I do that as a volunteer. Yeah.
okay.
So I'm old. I don't know about traipsing through the bog at 76.
All right. Well, thank you for
Thank you for
coming.
letting me zoom in.
And I appreciate your enthusiasm,
you.
and you can join
Yeah,
us
thank you.
anytime.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to mute myself.
All right. So our next meeting is Monday, February 27th, and it's not going to be in the select board room. It's going to be in the community room. I have a slightly different Zoom link and all that stuff, which I'll put on the next agenda, but I'm just mostly saying it to the committee members so that we don't walk into the wrong room. I actually don't know where the community room is. so-
That was my next question. I don't even know.
No idea. No idea.
Right over the police department, so.
Oh, sure. Okay, got it. That makes sense. It's just at the very, very end of the other hall next to the gym.
Where the annual meeting is?
No, it's
Next to that.
Next door to that, yeah.
The annual meeting is in the gym, but this is the door right before that. It's at the very, very end of the hallway. And if you take a left, you go into the gym. If you go straight, you're in the community room.
For those of you who remember the Plain School, that was second grade.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so cute.
First and second grade, I think, were over there. No, it was first grade. I'm sorry. Second grade was in the main building. My apologies.
Oh, all right. Okay, and then we had talked about all of our upcoming meetings. Turns out that May 15th is I think it's the meeting the night before the annual town meeting. I don't know if it's called the baby town meeting or anyway, it's a town meeting that night. We can't meet that night on May 15th. So I was wondering if the 22nd was doable for everybody instead. The 29th, the following Monday, is Memorial Day.
It's fine with me.
22nd, okay?
That's okay.
I will
Okay.
be out of town, but I could probably pull them in, so.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any other things that didn't make it to the agenda? No? Okay. All right. So I move that we adjourn. Do I have to move to adjourn the meeting? I feel like I ask this every week. I'm sorry.
You do.
Second,
Okay. All in favor?
Hi.
Aye,
Okay. It passes.
yes, goodbye.
you.
Thank
you
you.
all.
Be well.